Thanks everyone for coming here, and first of all I'd like to apologize to everyone who's here if you're expecting me to talk about big data, because my talk is not at all about big data. In fact, it's the opposite. We are struggling to acquire data, so if you want to leave now, I won't hold it against you. But if you stay, you'll hear some interesting things. Okay, so I'm from Imperial College London and I work at Department of Infectious Diseases and Epidemiology. And I have been working in this area for about a year now, and it came as somewhat of a news to me that some people do not think of epidemiology as real science. To the extent that nature had to step in and tell everyone, oh well, it is a science, and it is science that has been credited with saving millions of lives, and that's an actual number. So what I want to talk to you about, my talk has two parts. In the first part, I want to talk to you about the work that we are doing in our department, the tools that we are developing to help people who are engaged in outbreak response. And then I'll talk about the tool that I'm working on and the problems that I'm facing there. So as an example of the tools that we are developing, so our output, as far as we are concerned, we are very much concerned with engaging or helping people who are engaged in outbreak response, whether they are policymakers or field epidemiologists, to inform their decisions, logistic things, etc., etc. So our output is not only papers like this one, EpiEstim. So this is a framework for estimating what is a key parameter in epidemiology, which is the reproduction number. It's simply the average number of secondary cases you would get from one case. So this is an output, but this work was also distributed as a Shiny app, as an R package, and also as in an Excel, as an Excel macro, because as Danny alluded to in her keynote speech today, not everyone uses R, and R has a steep learning curve for people who have not already used it. And there are a lot of field epidemiologists who are not well conversed in R. So that brings me to the second important thing that we are doing, a lot of important things, but that's the second important thing we are doing. So this is a platform, we call it Recon. It's a platform that has, much like Tidyverse, it is a collection of packages for doing epidemiology, as well as a ton of learning resources, training resources on using packages, very good documentation. We have our own Slack channel, so if you need help with any of our packages, you can always get in touch with us, stuff like that. So I'll probably show you that later. This picture was taken in I think 2014 or 2015 when I was not at the department, and this is a picture of the team that was engaged with WHO in Ebola response in West Africa. At the time, the analysis that was done was quite ad hoc, and everyone in the team was quite embarrassed to look at it again. But the lessons that they learned in that response were taken on board, and a lot of very good tools were developed in-house. And the difference in the analysis showed in the 2018, so last year, in fact this year when we were involved with WHO in responding to the Ebola outbreak in DRC, our workflow was completely modular, developed in R. We had a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. It was completely automated. Each person could do their own work in R. Then we could pull everything together, have an automated report. So it was very clean, modular, and very nice, basically. Okay, so that brings me to the work that I'm doing. So the work that I'm doing is about quantifying the risk of exportation of an outbreak between countries. As you all very well know, our world is now more connected than ever. And this graph shows the spectacular, phenomenal decrease in cost of transportation. And we know that anecdotally, we all have experienced that we can now travel more easily than ever. And if we can, so can diseases, and that's what is happening. So what we want to be able to do is we want to have an automated framework where we can pull in data from different streams and come up with a kind of a risk map of exportation of disease from one region to another. That's the idea. Who are our partners and what are we doing? So the cornerstone of our work is using publicly available data. And what we are doing here is we are using data that is available through digital surveillance. So whenever there's an outbreak, a lot of organizations get involved, MSF gets involved, WHO gets involved, they send boots on the ground, but that's a very expensive process. And there are a ton of organizations that are doing digital surveillance. So like ProMed, HealthMap, so they monitor the news feeds, I believe, Google search things, etc., to come up with an idea of what's going on. Are people getting sick? Where are they getting sick? And stuff like that. So we have all this information. We want to pull in all this information and use it to be able to predict the risk map that I talked about. This is the vision of what we want to be able to do. So we want to distribute our work as an R package, as well as we'll have a website that's integrated with HealthMap. If you have not heard of HealthMap, you should go check it out. It's very great. So this is the kind of thing that we want to do, and this is based on some of the work that we have done. So what you are seeing here is what actually happened. So this data is from West African epidemics, so we already know what has happened. This is how we are validating our models. And you can see the numbers that actually the cumulative case counts over there and our projections over here on the right. These are our project partners. So I already talked about ProMed. HealthSites is another wonderful site that is doing, it's collecting data on health facilities all over the world. So the idea is to have every health facility on the map. That's them. HealthMap is like ProMed. They're also doing digital surveillance. MRC is where I'm at, Imperial College London. So this is the idea. The idea is that the model sits at the heart of our work. The model pulls in data from what we know about a particular disease. So each disease is unique. It spreads in a different way. It has different characteristics, etc. So that information will be gathered from the literature. But there are some things that are common. So for example, how do people move between, so if there is a region, let's say West Africa, how are people moving in that region? That's an important input to understand how the disease is going to spread. Then we have information about host and environment susceptibility. So whether, for example, if this is a vector-borne disease, whether that vector is present or absent in that country, whether the weather of that country is conducive to the growth of the specific disease that we're talking about. Another thing that we want to include is the ability to contain an outbreak. So for example, a country that has a low GDP might be in a more difficult position to address an outbreak if there is one. So that is something we want to include. And then of course the number of cases over time and space that is coming from the digital surveillance tools that I talked about. All these data streams will go into the model, and the model will output a relative risk map as well as a risk, where does the risk come for a particular country. So I'll talk about my model. So I already mentioned the things that our model is going to take into account. That's the local past incidence, pathogen characteristics, local health access quality, movement between neighboring locations, etc., etc. So the equation is not showing up, but I guess it's all right. Okay. So this is a key part of the model. So you want to say, how do people move? So this is the probability of a person moving from I to J. This probability is proportional to the probability of somebody not moving at all, multiplied by the relative flow from I into J. So how do I figure out what's the flow between different locations? There are different human mobility models. One of the most famous ones or most used ones is gravity model, which kind of posits that the flow between locations is something like the gravity. It follows like a gravity law, proportional to the product of populations and inversely proportional to the distance between them. Then we have other models like radiation model, which kind of say that, if you are moving away, then all the locations in between will absorb the flow between I and J. Okay, so I'm just going to directly go to the results. So the data that we get from HealthMap and ProMed is not very clean data, so we have to do a lot of data cleaning, data tidying, data wrangling, etc., and that's all happening in R. So this is an example. What you see here is the first step, and you see that there are already a lot of missing cases. There are a lot of issues here. So you can see that each dot here is an alert that has been generated by HealthMap or ProMed, and you can see that there are duplicate alerts, and there are many other problems. So we'll do several data cleaning steps. So we'll merge duplicates to come up with non-duplicated data set. Then we will remove all the points that make my data not consistent. So if I'm taking a cumulative case count, it should always be increasing. So I can't go 1, 5, 10 and 1 again. So if there is a thing that is making that happen, I have to remove it, have to figure it out. Then I have to make sure that it's, and then I interpolate to fill in the missing data. And then this part I want to talk about, I couldn't show you the model, but I want to talk about how we are doing model validation. So I spoke about HealthMap and ProMed data. So this is data that's kind of not very clean, not super clean. But we also had data that was collated by WHO during the 2014 West African epidemic. And this data was cleaned up by other researchers. It was made available. So we decided to use that data to kind of validate our approaches and to see what's the correlation, for example, whether if you're doing digital surveillance, whether your data that you get is as good as doing surveillance on the ground. And that's what you're seeing here. So you're seeing weekly incidence from the 3 different data sources that we have, WHO, HealthMap and ProMed. And you see that there is quite a good correlation between the 3 data sources. So that gives us some confidence that in a real situation, in an evolving situation, it might be a good idea to use HealthMap and ProMed data. This is, we are using the 3 different data sources to estimate the reproduction number, and the reproduction number keeps changing over time. And again, we see a very good correlation between the reproduction number estimated from the 3 different sources, except for shifted peaks, which might reflect, for example, delayed reporting. So, you know, there is Ebola and nobody's talking about it, and suddenly, you know, there is Ebola and everybody starts talking about it at once, so it might reflect that. Okay. Now what we are doing is then we have all this data from digital surveillance tools. We have information about health access. I'll talk about that later. So we are doing parameter estimation using MCMCs, all the parameters in my model, the parameters on the gravity model, as well as the reproduction number and other things that go into it. We do MCMC using STAN, and then we come up with posterior distributions for our reproduction number at different times. So I am dividing the whole period into different time chunks, and I'm estimating the reproduction number for each time chunk. And then I finally do prediction. So what we are doing, what you're seeing here is the weekly incidence. The data from here all the way to the red dots, that's all the data that I use to estimate my parameters. And the red dots are special because I'm assuming that the reproduction number in this period is what will continue over the forecast horizon. So that's what I'm using. So this is, I'm just plotting HealthMap data. I'm validating it against HealthMap data, and you can see it's doing well somewhere and at other places it's not. And a particular thing that where it will not do well is whenever we have a cusp, because this model assumes that things will continue to stay the way they were. So if the epidemic was increasing, it will continue to increase. So whenever there is a peak, it's going to do badly. This is another same prediction using same data but for a different time point. This is when the epidemic is phasing out, it's declining. And we were also able to do a very fine scale, so the data collected by WHO, which I'm calling WHO data, but WHO just collated it rather than. So anyway, we were able to do it at district level rather than doing it at a national scale. And you can see again that in some cases my model will do really well, but whenever there is a peak, it's going to, you know, not do so well. So for example, here it's I'm using this information to estimate my reproduction number, and then it's just going to say zoom. It's going to, the epidemic is going to take off, whereas it's going to decline now. Okay, so some of the things that I mentioned at the beginning that we are struggling with the lack of data. So I'll talk about some of the things that we want to do next and some of the issues that we are facing. First of all, we want to include healthcare capacity in the model. And I mentioned HealthSites.io, that's our project partner, and we want to use their data, but their data is crowdfunded. And I think Bill mentioned this, that, you know, basically it's showing you where, not where the data is, it's just showing you where the people are. So that's, I think, part of the problem. So the data is really incomplete and sketchy, so as it stands, we might not be able to use it. We want to be able to use more informative priors from model parameters, etc. So these are things we want to do. a very important thing that we want to understand is how do I assess model performance? So a very naive way of doing it would be to say, well, if your observed point falls within your credible interval, then your model is doing well. But that's something of a vacuous statement, because if my confidence intervals are very wide, say the infamous CDC forecast, where anything from 0 to a million could happen, then naturally my observed would be falling within that credible interval and I'm not really saying anything. So we are thinking about ways of assessing model performance, and if you have some ideas, love to hear them. The key issue that we are facing is because we want to really build this tool on publicly available data sources. So especially for determining flows between locations, that's a key problem. There is simply no information available that we could find to assess absolute flows between countries. And also the shape files. So I don't know if you know about GADM. It's doing a great job of collecting shape files. You have shape files for all the countries, but some of them are out of date. So we want to be able to use updated shape files. And these are the things that we cannot find. Also, a good proxy for healthcare capacity. If we cannot use HealthSites data, then what can we use and what would be a good proxy? So these are the things, some of the things that we are doing next. So if you want to talk about this, get in touch with me. That's my GitHub repo, Twitter, that's always there. You should definitely visit this website. It has great resources, and that's our repo for our tool. It's not the best name in the world, but we'll probably change it. Emirates Process Data, because Emirates is the name of our project. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, it's 2:57, so
Sure.
3 questions.
Yeah. So this seems very similar to the Google flow trends that they had in 2008, and it failed spectacularly. What are the learnings that you have used from that project on your project?
Sorry?
So what are the learnings that you have used from that project to your project?
Yeah, okay, so his question is actually very pertinent. He's saying that Google Flu Trends use something similar and it failed in a very bad way. Everybody knows that. And he's asking what are the learnings from Google Flu Trends that we have translated. I actually cannot answer that question because I have not investigated Google Flow Trends in detail. Yeah, sorry.
Blue and then you. Yep.
So when you got your priors, so what timescale did you use that?
So prior distributions, so that's in days. Yeah.
So did you try with, could you get this full app, or did you try to go weekly and see if that changed?
So what's happening there is we want to be able to, so an important information there is how long does it take for an infected person to transfer the infection, and that information is in days. So I really don't think I haven't tried it, but I don't think it could be safely translated into weeks. Yeah.
One time on the back, sorry. Yep.
For the prediction that didn't work out very well, have you tried using an observer type of pattern in order to, when you get like actual data or new data, to adjust the new predictions? So just the model is going to keep predicting based on that assumption. But if you consider new data coming in, like actual data,
Right, right.
you can adjust the model instead of retraining it, just adjust the model to the new data that is coming.
True. So his question is whether we have tried adjusting the model as new information comes in to deal with the problem of the peak. So the short answer to that question is yes. We are kind of experimenting with something like that. What was the long answer? I forgot about it, but I'll talk to you about it. But yes, we are experimenting with that kind of approach. Yeah, the other answer was we are also trying to, so I showed you the red dots, which is the length of the time that we are using. We are assuming that the reproduction number stays constant in that period. So if we shorten that window, we'll be using less of the previous data. So we will be able to better capture that. But there's no way to automatically decide right now what will be the best window to use in that case. So that's something else that we are trying to figure out. Have we investigated Kalman filters? No, not at all. Sure, I'll definitely I'll look into it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr.
All right.